And welcome back. So how much do you think it would cost to build a gas station in Afghanistan? $200,000? Maybe $500,000? Try $43 million, and it came right out of your pocket. Well, not literally, but you know, the symbolic kind of thing where you pay taxes and it goes towards something. Anyway, that's right. Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction released this report that shows the Department of Defense Special Task Force designed to spur the Afghan economy was under investigation for criminal activity. Who would have thunk that? When the cost of the gas station was discovered. The Task Force for Stability and Business Operations, an $800 million program funded by the American taxpayer that ended in March, was behind the excessive spending. According to John Sopko, the Department of Defense, quote, asserts that it no longer has any knowledge of the task force. Interesting, just kind of disappeared. The DoD had budgeted $3 million for the station, but the overhead costs added another $38 million to the project. Actually, that would be, if we're doing the math right, it would be more like $40 million to the project. Anyway, the gas station isn't the first example of wasteful spending by the federal government in Afghanistan, or in general for that matter. More on that in a moment. Earlier this year, Sopko found the U.S. spent $335 million on a power plant no one uses. Ben Weingarten. Not the first time, not the last, I'm sure, but $43 million for an Afghan gas station, and it doesn't even have a Quickie Mart inside. It's just a gas station.
Yeah, well, I don't know if the Quickie Mart would be Sharia compliant there.
Oh, very good point.
But also, I mean, you know, we're living in a day and age where, you know, sequestration was considered the most draconian possible thing. How can the country survive? As we're going up to $20 trillion in debt by the end of this presidency, and you wonder, how do we get here? Now, $43 million actually pales in comparison to the entitlements, which are where the real spending is. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, our government is out of control, and basically I think you're going to have a reset at some point. Either the people will rise up and they'll say, we need to slash all of this unnecessary wasteful spending, or the bond market will react, and suddenly the U.S. government will be paying 5 or 10% on its treasuries, and then we'll have a real problem on our hands.
There actually was something like that. It was called the Tea Party. It was quite some time ago, but I love how—
I remember those rallies.
Yeah, and the way the DoD probably got away with this, and this is the military in general, is they just rename it or give it a fancy acronym. The DoD Compressed Natural Gas Dispensary is what they called it.
It's a gas station.
So it literally is like a four-pump gas station. Right. But they make it sound on paper like it's this massive, and $43 million for a natural gas, you know, dispensary, I mean, that's a reasonable number if you think about maybe it's a production facility or something. But no, it is a 4-pump gas station.
Do we know if it's self-serve, or do you think they have somebody working there? I wouldn't work there.
I bet they have masseuses staffing the darn thing.
You think so?
Something dumb.
Wow. Speaking of masseuses, I want to get your thoughts in a moment. Give me an example.
Have you brought someone today?
What's that?
Some special guest you're going to introduce us to?
Well, no. Ben was looking it up during the break, and I think he found some interesting things that the federal government has also spent money on in the past that we may deem superfluous.
Yeah. So one example, and this is from the Waste Book that I believe Senator Coburn used to put out, and it's put out by a senator every single year.
Oklahoma Republican.
Yeah, Oklahoma Republican. Right. So one line item, the National Institutes of Health spent $387,000 to give Swedish massages to rabbits with a mechanical machine.
Really?
That's money well spent, I would say.
Wow. Elsa always goes for the deep tissue.
That's at least as much as those women at Scores get for something like that.
Wow. We went down to Scores in this segment.
So
I don't know how we did that.
One,
it's closed, by the way.
It
No longer exists.
You know, I don't know. I bow to your expertise on that subject,
jump in,
Mr.
Ellis.
Concha. Listen, clearly there's a huge amount of waste, right? And nobody does it better than the military-industrial complex. In fact, I've got some welfare queens who could learn something from those people in the Afghanistan military.
So as
$800 for a hammer.
As a former military guy, then how do you fix it?
Well, the thing you need to do is you need to have accountable oversight. And when I was in Iraq and we were pulling the troops out, we were leaving millions, if not billions of dollars of equipment. We had Humvees as far as the eye could see that ISIS is now driving around.
Right, exactly.
You know? I mean, these things that you see up there now, ISIS is driving those around and using them against the things that we put in place. And the only way to do that is to have an accountable administration.
But whenever we talk about budget cuts, and if you're a Republican, you can never bring up the military and cutting budget there, because that means you're weak. And if you're weak, that means you don't support a strong military. You don't support a strong military, then you're not a Republican.
Right. And the reason the military has such a spending problem is if you're given $100 million every year, like a command is, you have to spend that $100 million. If you spend $89 million, well, guess what? The next year you only get $89 million. So there is no incentive to save money in the military. There's an incentive to actually spend up to that very limit. It's unbelievable. It's so stupid.
The real problem is, and you can even go back to Reagan, when Reagan wanted to zero out certain agencies and he couldn't even touch it and he couldn't get through his own Congress. The problem is that we have baseline budgeting, which says basically that you start from wherever we were in the prior year, and a budget cut is when the rate of increase slows down. That's an absurdity. I mean, explain to the American people that you're going to have to take draconian cuts. You're going to spend, 50% less than you were planning on spending, which was already 100% more the next year.
Right.
It's absolutely absurd. And by the way, that's discretionary spending, which is still, again, the minority of the budget, not the majority.
Yep. Not the majority, right.
Yeah.
You start talking about cutting military bases, so that means jobs, that means whole communities, and you just, where do you begin, where do you end, Alice? I'm not quite sure, but we got to go. So anyway, so what do you think of this latest example of government waste? Go to newsmaxtv.com/comments and let us know. That's newsmaxtv.com/comments. Coming up, we read some of your colorful and always unfiltered viewer comments. Stick around.